Moses had been found as a baby floating in a basket on the river Nile, and he'd been rescued by the Egyptian princess, who then brought him up as her own son in the palace. But Moses knew he was a Hebrew. One day he watched his people, the Hebrews, being forced to work hard as slaves by the Egyptians, and that made him very upset. When he saw one of the men being badly treated by an Egyptian master, he looked around to check no one was watching, and then he attacked the Egyptian. Unfortunately, he ended up killing him. He buried him in the sand. The next day, he saw two Hebrews fighting and went across to stop them. "Why are you hitting each other? You're brothers," he asked. "Who made you ruler over us?" came the reply. "Are you going to kill us like you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" That made Moses very afraid. People knew he had murdered an Egyptian. And when Pharaoh found out, he was very angry, and he gave orders that Moses should be killed. But Moses ran away. He left the country and hid in the faraway wilderness of Midian. He was tired after the long journey, and he rested by a well. At that moment, the 7 daughters of a local priest of Midian came to draw water from the well for their father's flock. But some shepherds arrived and pushed the women away so that they could get to the water for their flocks first. When Moses saw this, he came to the rescue of the girls and watered their sheep for them. When the girls returned to their father, whose name was Jethro, Jethro asked them why they were back so soon. They explained how an Egyptian had helped them. "Well, invite the man for something to eat," Jethro told his daughters. Moses came that day to have a meal with them. He didn't stay for one day. He came to stay with their whole family. And later on, he married one of the daughters. Her name was Zipporah. And they had a son, whom Moses named Gershom. That meant, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." Sometime later, Pharaoh died, and a new Pharaoh came to rule the country. But the situation of the Hebrews was just as bad, and they cried out to God to rescue them. God heard their cries for help and remembered his promises to his people. He had a plan to rescue them, and Moses, who was looking after the sheep in the wilderness, was part of that plan. One day, Moses was looking after the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, and he led them to the far side of the wilderness to graze by a mountain called Horeb. He watched a bush that had caught fire and noticed it didn't burn up. Curious, Moses decided to take a closer look. Suddenly God called to him from inside the burning bush, "Moses!" "Here I am, Lord," Moses replied. God told Moses to take off his shoes, for he was standing on holy ground. "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob," God announced. At this, Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. God told Moses that he had seen the suffering of his Hebrew slaves. He was going to rescue them and lead them to a land of milk and honey where they would be free. "Go to Pharaoh and bring my people out of Egypt. Tell him to let my people go." But Moses started to make excuses. Who am I to do such things?" "I will be with you," God said, "and I promise that you will be able to worship me with the Hebrews on this mountain. But if I go to the Hebrew leaders, Who shall I say sent me? Asked Moses. Tell them, I am who I am has sent you. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. My name is forever. Go to the leaders of Israel and tell them that I'm going to rescue them from slavery and lead them to the land of promise. And then you will come and worship me here in the wilderness. But Moses still made excuses. But what if they won't listen to me? He said. What have you got in your hand, Moses? God asked. A shepherd's staff, replied Moses. Throw it to the ground, said the Lord. When he threw his staff to the ground, it became a snake. Moses was scared and jumped away from it. Reach out your hand now and take the snake by the tail, said the Lord. As Moses grabbed the snake's tail, it turned back into a staff. This sign will help them believe, said the Lord. Now put your hand inside your cloak. Moses put his hand inside his cloak, but when he pulled it back, it was white with a terrible skin disease called leprosy. Now put your hand back in your cloak again, God ordered. When Moses pulled his hand out from his cloak a second time, his hand was healed. If the Hebrew leaders don't believe these two signs, then take some water from the Nile and pour it out on the dry ground. I will make the water turn to blood, the Lord told Moses. Despite all these signs, Moses still kept making excuses. I find it hard to speak well or very clearly, he said. Who gave people their mouths? Replied the Lord. I will help you speak and teach you what to say. But Moses still made excuses. Please send someone else to do this. Now God became angry with Moses. Your brother Aaron the Levite can speak very well. He is on his way to meet you. He will be your spokesman. Take your staff in your hand so you will be able to perform miracles. So Moses returned to his father-in-law that day and asked his permission to return to his people in Egypt. Go, I wish you well, replied Jethro. Aaron had already been told by God to travel to meet him. Moses put his wife and 2 sons on donkeys ready for the journey. The Egyptians who remembered what you did and wanted revenge are now all dead, God reassured Moses. The 2 brothers met up at Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, and welcomed each other. Moses shared with Aaron all that God had told him. Then they all set off for Egypt to tell the Hebrew leaders that God had plans to rescue them.